The Qibla, the direction of the Kaaba in Mecca, is the single most defining architectural feature of any mosque, guiding the prayers of millions across the globe. For centuries, this alignment has represented unity and the physical manifestation of spiritual focus. Yet, as modern technology allows us to measure directional precision down to the millimeter, historians and architects examining Turkey's earliest Islamic structures have uncovered a widespread and perplexing phenomenon. Many historic mosques, particularly those dating back to the Seljuk and early Beylik eras in Anatolia, exhibit noticeable deviations from the geographically accurate Qibla. These are not minor discrepancies, but significant misalignments that sometimes vary by several degrees. The fundamental question we must address is whether these variations were simple construction errors, the result of inadequate technology, or, more complexly, reflections of sophisticated theological and astronomical debates among the scholars who guided their construction. When Islam spread into Anatolia starting in the 11th century, the builders faced an entirely new set of geographical and navigational challenges. Unlike the more established centers in the Levant or Mesopotamia, where Qibla coordinates had been refined over centuries, Anatolia was frontier territory. The vast, mountainous terrain and the sheer distance from Mecca amplified the difficulty of precise orientation. Early mosque builders in cities like Sivas, Kayseri, and Divri relied heavily on local knowledge, crude instruments, and often the orientation of existing pre-Islamic structures or celestial observations that were adapted for their needs. This reliance on localized and relatively unsophisticated methods meant that achieving true precision was not just difficult, it was often impractical, leading to the establishment of numerous local qiblas, which deviated based on the immediate observations available to the construction team. The primary method for determining the Qibla among educated scholars during this period relied on ilm al-hay'a, or observational astronomy. This involved using spherical trigonometry to calculate the shortest great circle path between the location and Mecca, M. However, mastering this mathematics required highly trained astronomers, specialized astronomical tables known as zijas, and sophisticated instruments like the perfected astrolabe. Many smaller Anatolian cities lacked access to these top-tier resources. Instead, local imams or builders often utilized simpler, though less accurate, methods, such as observing the position of the sun during key equinoxes, or even simply relying on rough magnetic compass readings, which we now know were inherently flawed and subject to local geological interference. The resulting discrepancy often manifested as a rotation error, sometimes aiming not toward Mecca itself, but toward an older, less accurate Qibla direction established by earlier Islamic schools of thought. A critical debate arose among legal scholars, the fuqaha, regarding how much precision was actually required by religious law. Was a precise calculation mandatory, or was a general direction sufficient? The early Hanafi school, prevalent in Anatolia, generally maintained a pragmatic view. Faced with the technological limitations of the time, they often concluded that facing the general direction, jihat al-Qibla, was sufficient, provided the intention, niyah, was correct. This theological flexibility created a buffer zone for acceptable error. Scholars argued that if the true Qibla could not be determined with scientific certainty, and in vast Anatolia it often couldn't, relying on local indicators, such as the direction the first traveling Muslims prayed, or the direction indicated by the rising or setting of specific stars, became acceptable substitutes. This pragmatic interpretation often superseded the pursuit of pure astronomical accuracy, consciously prioritizing function over absolute geometric perfection. Consider the magnificent Great Mosque and Hospital of Divri, a UNESCO World Heritage Site constructed in 1228. This complex, famous for its elaborate stone carvings, offers a tangible example of this misalignment challenge. Detailed measurements reveal that the mihrab deviates several degrees to the south of the true Qibla. Given the scale and sophistication of the architecture and patronage, it is unlikely this was a result of simple negligence. Instead, historians suggest the builders might have used a recognized, albeit imperfect, astronomical rule of thumb common at the time, or they deferred to an established local tradition that had been adopted before the arrival of accurate instruments. This conscious or unconscious acceptance of deviation in such a monumental project underscores the prevailing tolerance for good enough orientation, provided the community accepted the direction and maintained their unified prayer line within the structure. The debate intensified when scholars like Ibn al-Shatir, died 1375, further perfected astronomical methods, making highly precise Qibla determination mathematically accessible. As these new improved tables and celestial mechanisms filtered into the Ottoman sphere, the earlier misalignments became impossible to ignore. The later Ottoman centralized administration often launched campaigns to correct the orientations of older, misaligned mosques, a process known as tashih al-Qibla. In some cases, rather than tearing down and rebuilding the entire structure, the mihrab niche itself was rotated or completely shifted within the existing wall, creating an awkward, non-perpendicular junction with the rest of the architecture. This visible attempt at correction is evidence of the shift in theological priority. Precision was now achievable, and thus increasingly mandatory, moving away from the earlier pragmatism towards astronomical exactitude. The idea of ijtihad, independent reasoning in legal matters, plays a significant role in understanding these early building practices. Local scholars, operating under the assumption that precise tools were unavailable or unreliable, exercised their judgment to establish the most suitable direction based on local data. This diversity in ijtihad is why mosques within the same city, built perhaps decades apart, might show vastly different levels of Qibla accuracy. Furthermore, early builders sometimes aligned the mosque not strictly with the astronomical Qibla, but with a practical geographic coordinate, such as the direction of sunrise on a specific holy day, or simply a major road that was already aligned in what they believed was the right direction. Their priority was the communal necessity of establishing a place of worship quickly and efficiently, perhaps valuing unity within the prayer hall over external scientific validation. One intriguing explanation connects the misaligned Qiblas to the concept of the Qibla of the sun. Historically, some Islamic communities sought to align their prayer direction with the rising or setting points of the sun on specific dates, such as the summer solstice. While this method was mathematically less rigorous than spherical trigonometry, it was easily observable and verifiable by anyone with basic astronomical knowledge. For instance, in certain Anatolian regions, aiming toward the point where the sun sets on the first day of summer might have been adopted as the functional Qibla. This folk astronomy approach, though not endorsed by leading Islamic scientists, provided a simple shared directional marker for communities lacking access to sophisticated knowledge. These local solar alignments often resulted in a consistent yet non-Meccan angular deviation that we still observe today in numerous older structures. The widespread historical acceptance of these deviations confirms an important principle within Islamic jurisprudence. The validity of the prayer does not rely on perfect geometric alignment, but on the sincere intention and the best effort made given the available knowledge. The consensus, solidified by figures like Imam al-Ghazali centuries prior, was that if one exerted maximum effort to determine the direction, any resulting error did not invalidate the worship. This theological safety net allowed communities to continue functioning and praying unified, even with a known directional flaw. The focus remained on the community's adherence to the defined direction within the specific mosque, establishing a sacred space that was practically oriented, even if astronomically challenged. The history of these misaligned mosques is therefore a testament to the resilience and adaptability of early Islamic theological application. The narrative fundamentally shifts with the rise of the centralized Ottoman Empire. With vast resources, established astronomical academies, and political stability, the Ottomans institutionalized Qibla determination. Highly accurate muwaqqits, or timekeepers, were employed in major mosques, tasked not only with prayer timings, but with constantly verifying and correcting directional accuracy. New mosques constructed in the 15th century onward, especially those designed by master architects like Sinan, exhibit far superior Qibla alignment, reflecting the standardization and technological superiority of the era. This change reflects a move from localized ijtihad to imperial standardization. The older, misaligned mosques thus became historical artifacts, monuments to the geographical and technological limitations of the Seljuk age, preserved but sometimes corrected in their mihrabs to meet the new, rigorous imperial standard. In conclusion, the misaligned Qiblas of early Anatolian mosques are not simply marks of failure, but rather complex historical documents, revealing the intersection of architecture, early science, and theology. They remind us that the establishment of sacred space was a dynamic process, fraught with challenges of technology and geography. These deviations underscore the profound effort historical communities made to adhere to a central tenet of their faith, even when faced with overwhelming logistical obstacles. The debate among scholars, whether they advocated for the pragmatic general direction or the pursuit of astronomical perfection, illustrates the vibrant intellectual life of the period. Today, these ancient stones stand as silent witnesses to centuries of prayer, proving that faith and function often found compromise where perfect precision was unattainable. The legacy of these fascinating structures continues to inform how we view Islamic architectural history and the practical application of religious law across vast geographies. They bridge the gap between idealized religious requirements and the messy reality of medieval construction and limited knowledge transfer. The debate over precision versus practicality remains a subtle yet potent reminder that faith often adapts to its environment. If this deep dive into historical Islamic astronomy and architecture has piqued your interest, please let us know in the comments which other historical mysteries we should tackle next. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on history and forgotten sciences.